censorship. Warning, censorship. Warning, censorship. Warning, censorship.
Welcome to the Rebel News Daily live stream. My name's Andrew Chapados. Good morning, Matt Brevner. How are you today?
I'm doing very well, my friend. How are you?
I'm doing well. Always a good time to talk to you. You're really up in our face here today. You know, maybe slide back a little bit. You're coming across as supreme leader, Matt Brevner. Very good. We're here to talk to you about the latest Rebel News stories from rebelnews.com, and of course the greatest and newest stories, I don't know why I said greatest, across the world. We've had big governor races and mayorship races in the United States. We've got Jason Kenney from Alberta. We've got Leonardo Dicaprio, in Glasgow, spreading his joy and willpower amongst the politicians there. And we're going to be joined by Lewis Brackpool, Rebel News UK reporter, about halfway through the hour, 12:30 Eastern Time, 9:30 on the West Coast, Matt Brevner, and he's going to hopefully tell us, a lot of the stuff we're wanting to hear: carbon taxes, carbon levies, as the Conservatives call it here, all that fun stuff that Greta warned us about. How are you feeling about the state of the climate change emergency these days, Matt?
Oh, I'm so glad that our supreme beings are keeping us safe. Wow, I actually got 4 hours sleep last night just knowing that Justin Trudeau is spreading his seed of virtue all throughout the land, and he can give us Canadians such an awesome reputation and name on the world stage. So yes, I'm sleeping well.
I'm sure he's doing that while he parties in the Netherlands. Yes, I'm sure he's doing that, getting drunk in the Netherlands with fellow politicians. Of course, you can interact with us through the live chat on Rumble. You've got Rumble Rants, and of course, they've got locals now. Rumble's blowing up. They're moving to Florida. Odyssey with Hyper Chats, and SuperU.net with their paid chats. And of course, you can't do that on YouTube anymore because we're demonetized. So we're going to stick with you on YouTube for a couple segments here, some non-COVID, non-election stories, because we can't talk about it on YouTube. Everybody's getting strikes these days for everything, whether you're a Let's Go Brandon songmaker, whether you're the Nelk Boys. Doesn't matter who you are, you're getting striked for something stupid on YouTube and making it so you can't post. So we don't want to get banned. We want to reach out to the audience as much as we can. So please go to rebelnews.com/livestreams and join us on Rumble, Odyssey, and SuperU. Send us a chat. You can comment on my new haircut. People like to say that I look like different people. So whomever you think I'm going to look like, you can go ahead and say that now. As Matt spirals back into the abyss that is his yellow background. So, yep, there we go. Yep. Okay, so our first story we can go to is Jason Kenney in Alberta. He's claiming, Matt, Alberta's back. He's, he's more for patriotism now. It's free and open, he says. Of course, it's not true. He says everybody's moving there, which could be true. But let's go ahead and play this clip if we've got it queued up. Producer AD of Jason Kenney, an Alberta legislator. Do we have that? All right, let's go ahead and hear from the wise words of Jason Kenney, who would never flip-flop or go back on anything he says.
And he said that inventory they cannot build enough houses for the demand that we are seeing in Alberta's housing market right now. And he estimated that there are about 100 families every week moving to Calgary alone from Southern Ontario. I know anecdotally, I know two or three, one relative, a former staffer and a friend in the last month have all informed me they've given up on the insane housing market and the congestion and, well, I don't want to spend too long bashing Toronto here, but they've given up on that and they want to have a fresh beginning in this land of opportunity with lower taxes, with a stronger economy, with more affordable housing, with great quality public services, with our magnificent natural environment. So I think we are starting to see the wheel turn on interprovincial migration coming back net to Alberta. Last year, and this is the amazing thing about this province, last year, while we were the hardest hit in COVID economically, because we had the global COVID recession and then we had the collapse of energy prices, we were the hardest hit, with the possible exception of Newfoundland and Labrador. And yet, we were one of only two provinces whose population grew. So that is encouraging.
So, of course, a lot of that is true, Matt Brevner, from British Columbia, Canada. more people moving to Alberta, lower taxes, cheaper housing market. But what I can't help but notice is people wearing paper and cotton behind him as he talks about how free and open his province is. Of course, you can't congregate if you're unvaccinated in Alberta, whether it's in your own home or with other people. You're just not supposed to speak to other people in person. It's illegal. So they, on one hand, we talk about this economic freedom, but they're stuck in this weird thing where they're also the most locked down province in the country still, but they're also the most economically free. Can you try to explain that to the viewers, Matt? How does this make any sense?
Well, when I watch that clip, to me, Jason Kenney sounds like the Kia salesman who's trying to tell you that the Kia he promises it's just as good as the BMW. It's better on gas, it's cheaper to own, it's cheaper to run. But the reality is, this is less about Alberta making a booming recovery while its oil sector is being crippled, and more about the economic state of Canada and the unaffordability of Canada and the effect of quantum easing. For those who don't know what quantum easing means, it basically means printing money, and we've been doing that long before the pandemic. So Alberta is affordable, and the reason why it's affordable is because, well, it got rocked by the NDP, it got rocked by the Liberals, and now it got rocked by the pandemic. So after record on record on record low housing costs because of a crippled economy, it's starting to see a little bit of a correction, a little bit back to normal, because money and debt is so cheap, right? Because interest rates are so low. So I wouldn't necessarily say, like, I love Alberta. I've considered moving there myself just because it is affordable, you know? But I wouldn't say that this is necessarily a sign that Alberta is back, but more of a sign that Canada is in real trouble.
I'm not willing to forego this pretend land where these people behind him are protected, and we're not going to talk about the segregation they've done of vaccinated and unvaccinated people, whether you believe, whether you've done it or not. Do you believe in the separation of people based on this? I would wager that most people that say that they're hardcore Albertans or conservative Albertans would say no, save for the do-nothing boomer class of haters. But I'm not willing to forgo this fantasy land. Even in Ontario, we have a date now, whether you believe Doug Ford or not, of vaccine passport being taken back and masks being taken off. I don't believe we have that in Alberta. Correct me if I'm wrong, but did Jason Kenney stand up there and criticize Justin Trudeau for what he's saying in Glasgow right now? I don't know. He should have come out with some harsh words, but at the end of the day, it seems like they're all on the same side anyway. So he's going to make these provinces, he's going to say, move to Alberta, it's great here. At the end, you're still going to end up paying the same prices for everything else. Your inflation's already way up. You're going to save some money from taxes, and that just seems to be like one of those things, you know, we have to have here, even though some of the other parties, like you mentioned, want to bring the tax there, the provincial tax. It seems like they've got their staples which they can rely on here, but that'll quickly fade away as more people go there, as more people bring their policies from other provinces. You can say, you know, it's just as free in Northern Ontario and cheap there to live. I mean, you don't hear of too many people moving up to Thunder Bay for the low cost of housing, up near up near Hudson's Bay is what I'm trying to say. You don't hear about people moving up there and saying how cheap and wonderful it is, because it's an NDP region. Jason Kenney's not going to mention that there's all these places across country. You want to move to Saskatchewan and Manitoba, I guarantee you it's booming there in the small town, and the housing markets are low and you can get a good paying job. But it's all basically become the same all across the country. Either you live in a city and you die by way of rent and transportation costs and high standard of living, or you can move out to a smaller town or smaller city, lower costs, but the inflation's still going to get to you. The lockdown procedures are still going to get to you, Matt. And what I'm trying to say here is I just don't trust Jason Kenney. He completely flip-flopped on so many integral things, just like Doug Ford is, and no amount of crying and being like, oh, we're back, we're the Texas of Canada. This isn't going to win me back when you've got somebody wearing a piece of paper behind you, touching their face the entire time.
Yeah, I mean, I wanted to really like Jason Kenney. I wanted to believe what he's been saying. But it seems like, unfortunately, they're all the same. And I don't mean that in a Chris Sky way. I still think that we need to participate and vote and hold our politicians accountable and try and hope for reform. But yeah, I mean, ultimately, man, the more I look at this stuff, and it just seems like the banks really run everything. The banks run the show, and the politicians are just the mouthpieces for the banks. So it's yeah. And anyways, it's disappointing. It's nothing that you guys watching the show haven't felt or thought on your own behalf. But yeah, just more noise from the talking heads.
It's becoming more and more clear as we move from COVID stuff to immediately into climate change, which is what everybody predicted. Every pundit you can watch on a right-wing source who's not overly establishment, even a bit left of that, saying, the climate stuff is coming, the climate lockdown suggestions, the high carbon tax is all coming. And you see it now this week in Glasgow. You see the large corporations saying it. You see the International Monetary Fund saying it. And it's also predictable, but they don't care. They're not smart enough, or they don't care to sway from that at all. They just keep steadfast, and everybody seems to go with it, Matt. I want to transition that from the paper talk I mentioned to Glasgow, which is where the World Climate Change Conference is happening. And I think it's funny how little it's talked about in the West in North America, because people aren't as bought and sold on that stuff here. I mean, COVID was one thing, all the lockdowns, everybody's saying it's for your safety. It's going to be really hard to convince, especially Americans, even who are left of center, that we need to stay inside and stop and once again not have our jobs and once again not see our friends because of climate lockdowns, which is a thing I think they'd be much more for in places like Scotland, New Zealand, where this is a huge big event. Boris Johnson's there, like Justin Trudeau, they don't even talk about it here. Like nobody cares that Justin Trudeau is in Glasgow. He's there saying all this stupid stuff that they won't even say, they won't even show you here, because it's way more of a bigger issue in Europe because they're much further to the left. Now, we've got Louis Brackpool out there, but one of the articles I want to show you is Leonardo DiCaprio is there. Can we pull that?
Oh, thank the Lord.
Can we pull that article up here?
Leo is there.
So this is from a few years ago, and we can double back to 2021 in a moment. But Leonardo DiCaprio took an 8,000-mile trip in a private jet to pick up an environmental award. And this is from 2016, I believe, if we can scroll down a bit more. DiCaprio expanded his carbon footprint last week. Let's blow that up a bit for the viewers. Taking a one-day transatlantic round trip in a private jet. The actor who... It's hard to read here. Can we enlarge it? I'm sure it's even harder for people on their phone and laptops. The actor who entreated reviewers to work together to fight climate change while accepting his first Oscar in March flew 8,000 miles from Cannes, which is where the film festival would be, to New York City to pick up an award from a clean water advocacy group at the Riverkeeper Fisherman's Ball. So that's from 2016. Now let's go to 2021, where he's arrived, I'm sure, by private jet again. Now, do I expect Leonardo DiCaprio, Matt, to take a coach flight? No, I don't. But you don't have to take your private flight and then just be like, how dare you people make such a carbon footprint? How dare you do all this stuff? And the 2016 thing, he was also caught taking a yacht right after when he was going to meet with some Indigenous folks, I believe in Canada. And I wasn't checking notes, I just thought. Matt Brevner, black, yes. Okay. So DiCaprio getting caught on this yacht last time. And now he's back in Glasgow, chumming it up. He's with the overlords of Justin Trudeau, Boris Johnson, all these good people. Matt, what is the need? Who is getting an appeal from Leonardo DiCaprio speaking at a climate change conference?
Well, I don't know because I haven't followed the money yet, but I'm sure there's money to follow. And figure out where that influence is coming from. But I'm pro natural resource extraction in a sustainable way. I did not take a plane to be on the live stream with you today. I think they have Zoom. They could send the award over
That's
mail.
Exactly
I'm
right.
sure he has access to 8K studios, all the best cameras and DOPs in the world. They could have done it that way. But in the age of the internet, I don't mean to fraction just a little bit, but there's just the lights are on. It's way harder to fool people. It's way harder to get away with stuff these days, it seems. And I think there needs to be a decoupling from this relationship between morality and influence and the youth. because the kids are really the most vulnerable. If kids grow up thinking that the people they see in the movies or on Instagram are credible and they should get their ideologies from them, they're going to grow up and be susceptible to nonsense like this. I feel like our generation is kind of like where things are starting to split off. But I mean, yeah, for example, like, yeah, this stuff is it's just hypocrisy after hypocrisy after hypocrisy. And after a while, it's just like, how do people even believe this stuff? I don't know. I have a hard time understanding that.
Well, Trudeau made the layover to party in Amsterdam, and now he's in Glasgow. Of course, Boris Johnson doesn't have to go very far, but there's so many world leaders there. They could easily do this all by Zoom. But my point of mentioning Trudeau in the Netherlands is that they're getting together to have fun again. Just like last year, right, when, I don't even know if it was a year ago, but Trudeau with the royal family, elbow bumping when he gets on stage and then laughing and shaking hands while they're all there. If they really wanted to set an example, they would say, you know what, we're taking the funding we would normally use for the conferences here, and we're putting it towards, you know, sustainable energy. We're going to buy solar panels for this amount of people. Or Justin Trudeau can say, you know, I'm going to put some of this money towards the native Canadians who don't have drinking water. That I've said that we're almost all fixed, but they're not even close. Look at him laugh. I'm pretty surprised he's not in blackface here, but you know, you get what you get with Justin Trudeau. Another thing is, I don't know why Prince Charles is at this climate change conference. Hasn't been in the spotlight really for 20 years. For most of, or not all of my adult life. But the reason he's there, Matt, and I'm pontificating here, is because he's a big part of the World Economic Forum and the International Monetary Fund, and he's sort of the shepherd of many of their talking points into this conference, which is really all about them. It's a climate change conference for the people who really want climate change legislation and carbon taxes, which is the World Economic Forum. And this is what Prince Charles is there to do. I know I asked a question off the top of why he's there, but that's my best guess as to what the hell else is he doing there? Prince Harry's not there. The King of Sweden's not there. What's the person of Monaco? Maybe they are there, but you know, it's just some random royal from a different country who's there to, you know, give talking points. He doesn't have any policy change capabilities on the books, of course. It's like we basically send, I don't know, maybe we should send Chris Sky to the climate change conference to give a speech. Greta Thunberg. I would love
to see that.
Greta Thunberg seems to be, and I wanted to mention her, she seems to be getting over this stuff. Do we have the clip of her singing along with people something against their climate plan? She is now, I don't know, and I was talking about this last night with somebody. I don't know if she's at the point where she just realizes the politicians that promised her things aren't going to do anything, or if she's gone the extra step to realize that, you know, the climate catastrophe as we know it isn't exactly as what she thought. So she seems to be treading a little bit of water and not wanting to go full bore, but she seems to have completely lost faith. Let's play a bit of the audio there.
Whatever the fuck they're doing inside there!
Oh, she's cursing. Greta, how dare you? Hard Rock Cafe. She's wearing the same tearaways I had in grade 4, I believe. The track pants. But maybe she still is, you know, righteous for the cause there while she takes her boats and her first class train rides. But still, she seems to be awake, to use a tired phrase, of the empty promises of world leaders who are now probably not inviting her to the press conferences anymore, probably not parading her around anymore. Her parents are probably disappointed they can't write as many books to profit off her anymore, which they did in the past. And if somebody like Greta Thunberg, Matt, is finally realizing, I think she's 19 or something, that the government's promises are empty, whether you care about climate change or, you know, poverty, don't you think that's a bit of a good sign in the right direction?
Well, I don't know. I think it's maybe the other way. I think she actually, you know, unlike these politicians, means what she says. And she's not happy with the lack of extremity, you know, in policy. And, you know, it's what do you expect? If you tell a kid growing up that the boogeyman's going to kill them, you can't expect them to not want to grow up and kill the boogeyman, you know? So, and I think that's what we're seeing. And I noticed even at, like, when we covered earlier in the year, Dre and I covered an Extinction Rebellion protest in Vancouver. These people, they really believe what they say, and they really think the world is going to end in 5 years. So, I mean, of course they're going to behave in the way that they're behaving if they actually are so, and I can say this on YouTube as of today, maybe not tomorrow, but if they're so misguided and misled and leading their life from a place of extreme fear of, impending chaos and doom, like, of course they're going to behave the way they're going to behave. So I don't think Greta is any different.
Only got 9 years to live, Matt. There's a viral clip put out by Louis Brackpool from Glasgow at the conference outside. If we want to play that on Twitter and tell you guys that we're going to break away from YouTube soon because, we want Louis's full Britishness to come out and say whatever he wants when we come back. So rebelnews.com/live streams, Rumble, Odyssey, Super U, because we're going to cut away from here and get to more spicy election and COVID topics. Let's show the clip from Lewis that exploded on Twitter and Instagram because it's so ironic.
So let's do net zero.
So here's the sign.
Wow.
They're in Glasgow for the conference. And of course, you got your old Honda generator. Surprised nobody's stolen that. It must be because there's so much CCTV. We've got Lewis's mouth live from Glasgow. Lewis, you want to pull the camera back a little bit? It's a big issue today. Lewis, how are you? What time is it there? What are you up to?
Hey guys, so sorry for the camera for some reason. It's really zoomed me in, so you've got a good close up of my face live. So apologies for that. It's about 4:30 in the afternoon, and I'm shacking up into a cafe because they've checked me out very early for my economy Airbnb. So yeah, apologies for any delays or anything.
No problem. Lewis, I want to ask you, and then Matt, you can ask him something right after. What's the conference been like? Is it a lot of world leaders? Is it fewer than we might expect? What's the general tone of what everybody's talking about there?
Well, unfortunately, Rebel News have been banned from even going inside the building, so I've been covering everything from outside. I've seen a lot of demonstrations from people who are concerned about their tyrannical governors. So I've interviewed people from Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, Uganda, and Zimbabwe, where they're protesting, saying that their government leaders are so corrupt and they shouldn't be here, and that the UK should get involved. So that's been extremely interesting. I've spoken to some climate activists who, of course, siding with the establishment. I'm not sure when that happened in the course of history, where hippies decided to side with the establishment for Mother Earth, so I don't really get that. Yeah, it's been great fun. I think the main question I've been really asking people is practice what you preach. So surely if the elite set an example, the people would follow if you really cared about carbon emissions and CO2.
Matt, you want to jump in here?
Well, I noticed, Lewis, when we covered I was just speaking with Andrew, when we covered an Extinction Rebellion protest in Vancouver a while ago, obviously lower profile than what you're covering right now. But it seemed like the error was that the people that are participating in these things are like, they genuinely believe what they're saying, and they actually have a genuine concern that the world is going to end and they're going to die. So what was it like speaking to, and maybe even empathizing with these protesters who are clearly like afraid for their lives? Like, what was that like? It's
exactly what you'd expect. I mean, these people really truly believe that the world's going to end in about 10 to 20 years' time. But we should act now, as opposed to wait a little bit, because they believe that if we just sit around and not doing anything, the world's just going to light up like a fireball. Which is just, I mean, it's so irrational thinking. It's quite hard to sort of decode. Speaking to a guy, he was explaining to me that, we should all be here. It's right for the leaders to be here to tell us plebs, how to live our lives, essentially. I put that on my Instagram and Twitter for people to see, where I just turned around and said, but surely, if they practice what they preach, didn't fly over on private jets, didn't be chauffeured by 4x4s, and have a carbon footprint, I think it was 96 times more than the average person Prince Charles was, surely that would set more of a better example if you really cared about that. But no, they seem to be more bothered about human interaction, that we shouldn't do this over Zoom. And it's just unbelievable, this hysteria that's been just stirring up from everywhere. And I feel like I've got to keep my voice down because I am surrounded by liberals. So I'm just...
Producer, if you can bring up some of the Prince Charles footage to play over top, please do. As we mentioned him, Lewis, I think he's there as, a shepherd for some of these policies. Is there any awareness of that? Awareness that this is going to result in big international policy? Justin Trudeau mentioned that we need a worldwide carbon levy, a carbon tax that's, flat across the board that we can charge people. Of course, that wouldn't make any more sense than a flat minimum wage across the United States would make. But I digress on that point. Is there any awareness of what some of this may quote-unquote actually mean, as in we're going to start making policies for better or for worse across the country without asking our population to vote on this or decide with us?
Yeah, I believe it's just classic elitism. They are in control. We do not have a say. We were never asked. It's classic. I mean, Boris Johnson already, we've spoken about this as well on your episodes, where Boris Johnson is really pushing out some radical green agendas, like banning diesel and petrol by 2030 as one of his policies, which is insane. And he also wants to, I think he wants to power an entire town out of hydrogen to see where that goes. So that was quite something. Glasgow, and I believe outside of Scotland as well, want to go for a net zero policy, which, as we know, is just not possible. I don't believe that is possible at all. It's just going to plunge more economies down the drain. And to even implement that in other countries who are less developed is going to be even more catastrophic. So, yeah, what can I say? It's just classic elitism.
Yeah, I'd like to see how they implement that on boats coming in from China. It's okay, it's international waters. Matt, any last questions for Lewis here before we send him back to his haggis?
Lewis, who do I'm a firm believer that whenever there's a politician pushing something, there's a money or initiative or a donor behind it. So who do you think stands to benefit from this global push towards clean energy, although we know clean doesn't mean clean the way maybe those protesters think it does?
Yeah, well, we saw what happened with COVID. We've been seeing this strange push for the last 2 years. It started off very light, it was all about your health. But then things started to change over the course of, a year or so, and everything became a bit more stagnant. It became a bit more sort of control freak styled, and you must comply. It started with obviously 2 weeks to slow the spread or 3 weeks to slow the spread, and now it's comply or you lose your job. So I think we're going to start seeing some big implications from these radical climate legislation. I predict climate lockdowns, and I predict that we're going to have less consumption on red meat, and they're not going to be able to sell it. And the people that profit from this are the people at the top, the elites, because they aren't affected. They want this one world agenda. I mean, I'm not surprised if the James Bond villain himself, Klaus Schwab, will make an entrance. I mean, we've seen Bill Gates there, and there's enough dirt on him to take out the bins. But yeah, who knows? It's definitely the elites, but it's hard to say from this point onwards.
I picture Klaus Schwab coming in on a carpet made of people. He just walks on people's backs and or floats in like a vampire. I'm not sure. Lewis Brackpool from Scotland. I don't know if that was the Bobbies or what they call them in Scotland coming behind you, but you might be in trouble. Is there a name for Scottish cops? I'm trying to think of something to do with haggis. I was going to go and ask them then, but I don't think that would be appropriate, would it? No. All right, maybe you should ask some people around, where's Greta? Where is she with her beans this year? As we know, famous Rebel News clip of Greta's car filled with Heinz beans, the British kind, the green can that we all know and love. Any closing words here, Lewis? When can we look forward to your next reports from Glasgow?
Oh, thank you very much for having me on, by the way, guys. I really appreciate it. I think there are 2 reports coming out today where some protesters are talking about anti-CCP, so the anti-Communist Party of China, whereas one girl was saying that Boris Johnson shouldn't be picking on countries such as China. So that's a very interesting report that's coming out today. And also, I spoke to a lot of demonstrators from around the world who are protesting their tyrannical president. So I really recommend that. That's coming out today, but more reports to come. I interviewed a Sikh taxi driver. He was very based, very cool, really hated the protesters. So that was really good fun. And there's some confrontations that are coming out too, so I can't wait.
And what's the website everybody can find that on again?
Reporting for Rebel News.
That is rebelun.com. So I recommend you go and check that out. You can find all my work there, and people have been chipping in to help with the trip as well, which is really, really kind. So I want to thank everyone who's been doing that so far.
Very cool. rebelun.com. You can see all of Lewis's reports. Angela Merkel looking super cool. Louis Brackpool maskless, killing people over there. You can also see the past reports we've had with Cian Bexty and, of course, Sheila Gunn-Reid at rebelun.com. There's Lewis. He's ready for you. Who knows what that building is in the background? Things are looking British. Thanks a lot for joining us again, Lewis. Always a pleasure to talk to you. Have a great day. Let's show some Prince Charles, because we all know and love him. Prince Charles, where are you? He never heeds my call when I need him. We're pulling up Prince Charles in a moment. Have we pulled away from YouTube yet, is the real question. Let's pull away from YouTube before we get to Prince Charles so we can really criticize everything he's saying. Matt, any reaction from what Lewis has to say about the protesters there?
It sounds like a lot of fun. I'm a little jealous. It sounds like a great time. I couldn't help. Well, I can't say that on YouTube. So ask me again when we're on Rumble what I thought.
Okay, rebelnews.com/live streams, where you can find the direct link to the live stream. If you can't navigate from here to Rumble, Super U, or what am I forgetting? Odyssey, of course. Maybe there's going to be a Trump one soon. I don't know, Matt. But let's go ahead and show Prince Charles in all his glory, and we'll get that question.